And what the hell was Biden thinking when he declared Easter Sunday to be Trans Visibility Day? Such total disrespect to Christians, and November 5th is going to be called something else. You know, it's going to be called Christian Visibility Day, when Christians turn out in numbers that nobody has ever seen before. Let's call it Christian Visibility Day, all right? And you know that very important phrase is under siege. You do know that, right? We will defend it 100%. When Joe Biden lit the national Christmas tree earlier this month, he completely failed to even mention the birth of Jesus Christ, which is hard to do if you're celebrating Christmas, right? He didn't mention Jesus Christ in his remarks. Not for 3 years he hasn't mentioned that, and barely mentioned God. When I was president, we brought back the beautiful phrase, Merry Christmas, and I said I'd do that. I'm very proud of that, actually, because as I said at the beginning, that was really under siege. And when I lit the Christmas tree each year, it was my honor to publicly celebrate the true source of Christmas joy, which is Jesus Christ. As president, I kept every promise I made to Christians and more, and I think everybody in this room understands that very well. That's pretty well documented. In our first 4 years, we appointed nearly 300 federal judges and 3 great Supreme Court justices. I stood up for religious liberty at home and all around the world. I protected innocent life, and I defended the Judeo-Christian values of our nation's founding.
Within a year after my dad's death, I was addicted to heroin. I was addicted for 14 years. I quit when I was 28 years old, and during that period, when I was in early recovery, is when all of these things started to make sense to me. My Catholic upbringing, all of this confluence of philosophy and theology and self-examination and pain that you go through. We grow through pain. You know, pain is ultimately the touchstone of spiritual growth. And addicts have a unique opportunity for redemption because they've been to hell. It destroys your life, and it destroys your relationships, and it hurts everybody that you love, and it makes you into a liar. Whenever you're living against conscience, which you're doing if you're addicted, you push God over the periphery of your horizon. So there is, a complete disconnection. I feel like I was like a one-dimensional human being, that I was a collection of appetites that needed to be fed all the time, and that becomes a full-time job. When I finally got sober, I came in, with my life wrecked, and I came in on my knees, and I made a decision. I knew I needed a spiritual realignment. And then I picked up this book by Carl Jung called Synchronicity. It was a kind of synchronicity that it was sitting on a table. And the reason I picked it up was because there was an album by The Police that had just been released, and it had the same name, and I didn't know what the word was. So I picked it up out of curiosity. And synchronicity is a coincidence. It's like one of those things that happens to all of us. When we start noticing them, it happens more often. An example would be you're talking about somebody who you haven't seen or thought about in 20 years. And the phone rings, and it's that person on the phone. And these little things happen to us all the time, right? And Jung saw those as interventions by God who would reach through the universe and break all of his own rules, the rules of mathematics, arithmetic, of percentages of chance, and of time and space, would reach through and do these little things to touch us on the shoulder and kind of say, I'm here. You're looking at a miracle. And Jung was a deeply spiritual man. Jung began having these very authentic spiritual experiences when he was a kid. And he remembers the dreams that he had and these synchronicities, other authentic spiritual experiences that kind of guided his life in this extraordinary way. What he says is that I can't use empirical tools and scientific tools to prove the existence of a God, but that I can prove that, having seen tens of thousands of patients come through his hospital, that people who believe in God get better faster and that their recovery is more durable and enduring. And for me, Reading that was much more impactful than if he had said that he had proven the existence of a God, which I would not have believed.
Right.
What he was saying was, it's irrelevant if there's a God up there or not. If you believe in one, your chances of living a healthier life and of recovery are better, and it's an easier path. And at that point in my life, I had made a vow that I would do anything at all, if it increased my chance of recovery by even 1%. But I made a decision, I'm going to start believing in God because it's going to improve my chance of recovery. And then I'm confronted with the dilemma of how do you start believing in something that you can't see or smell or touch or taste or hear or acquire with your senses. And Jung solves that problem by saying, fake it till you make it. Act as if. And he said, the faith will precede the evidence, that there will be evidence that will be overwhelming. I immediately, while I was reading this book, I said, okay, this is the answer. So I'm just going to start pretending there's a God up there, that he's looking at me all the time, and that life is kind of a test, and that, we're supposed to do the right thing, and I'm supposed to behave myself even when I don't have an audience, so even when nobody's watching me. The day I finished that book, I went out on a volleyball field. I was playing volleyball, and somebody hit the ball on a very, very powerful punch. It went way up, and then it came down and hit the top of the post, and it made this errant flight back up again. And as it was relaunching, I said, so that everybody on the field heard me, I said, that ball is going to get hit by a Mack truck. I don't know why I said that. I have no idea, but everybody heard me say it. And the ball went up and landed on a chain link fence, and then it bounced on the other side, and it rolled down about 40 yards into a main thoroughfare. And this giant 18-wheel diesel came by and popped it with just a resounding pop. And everybody looked at me for a second, or like, wow, how'd you do that? Oh, at that point, I had just finished this book about synchronicity. And I was like, okay, I can either just dismiss that the way that I would as a weird coincidence, or I can just say that, this is God's way of talking to me, and I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to accept the beauty of it.
For too long, politicians have tried, oh, have they tried, to centralize authority among the hands of a small few in our nation's capital. I see them all the time. Bureaucrats think they can run over your lives, overrule your values, meddle in your faith, and tell you how to live, what to say, and where to pray. But we know that parents, not bureaucrats, know best how to raise their children and create a thriving society. And we know that families and churches, not government officials, know best how to create a strong and loving community. And above all else, we know this. In America, we don't worship government, we worship God. Religious liberty is enshrined in the very First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. The American founders invoked our Creator 4 times in the Declaration of Independence. Benjamin Franklin reminded his colleagues at the Constitutional Convention to begin by bowing their heads in prayer. I remind you that we're going to start saying Merry Christmas again. I also want to speak to all of the people, see, you thought I forgot, in our faith community who are here with us tonight, veterans and non-veterans alike. You're never going to be forgotten. You'll never be forgotten. My administration will always support and defend your religious liberty. We don't want to see God forced out of the public square, driven out of our schools, or pushed out of our civic life. We want to see prayers before football games if they want to give prayers. We want all children to have the opportunity to know the blessings of God. We will not allow the government to censor sermons, to restrict the free speech of our pastors and our preachers and the people that we most respect, like Robert. That is why, just as I promised Pastor Jeffress and other faith leaders, I just signed an executive order following, and this is something that makes me very happy and very proud, following through on my campaign pledge to stop the Johnson Amendment from interfering with your First Amendment rights. As long as I am president, no one is going to stop you from practicing your faith or from preaching what is in your heart. We want to hear him.
What is your relationship and what is your understanding of God? Who is God?
Most philosophers would say, well, we're inside the mind of God. And so it would be impossible for us to understand actually what God's form is. So then the question is, how do you start believing in something that you can't see or smell or hear or touch or taste or acquire with your senses? And Jung provides the formula for that. And he says, act as if you fake it till you make it. And so that's, what I started doing. I just started pretending there was a God watching me all the time, and kind of life was a series of tests, and there was a bunch of moral decisions that I had to make every day. And if I make a whole bunch of those choices right, I maintain myself in a posture of surrender, which keeps me open to my higher power, to my God. And when I do those things right, so much about addiction is about abuse of power. All of us have some power, whether it's good looks or whether it's connections or education or family or whatever. And there's always a temptation to use those to fulfill self-will. And the challenge is, how do you use those always to serve instead God's will and the good of our community? And that, to me, is kind of the struggle. And when I do that, I feel God's power coming through me, and that I can do things. I'm much more effective as a human being. That gnawing anxiety that I lived with for so many years, and my God, it's gone. And that I can kind of put down the oars and hoist the sail, and the wind takes me. And I can see the evidence of it every day of my life.
Masks, no masks, everything, you can do all you want, but you still need help from the boss. We need help from the boss. That's what happened. We need help. Right? Yeah, we need help. It's all right to say it. Now, they'll criticize me for that. How dare he say that? How dare he say that? No, I'll say it. I'll say it. I'll say it. Somebody said to me the other day, "You're the most famous person in the world by far." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." They said, "Yes, you are." I said, "No." They said, "Who's more famous?" I said, "Jesus Christ." I'm not taking any chances. I'm not going to have an argument. Hey, I'm not having any arguments. Jesus Christ. I'm not going to take any chances. I'll give it, I guarantee. And let me look up and I'll say, and it's not even.
If we want to meet our obligation as a generation, as a civilization, as a nation, which is to create communities for our children that provide them with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us, we've got to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, those things that are not reducible to private property, but by their nature are the property of all of us, the commons, the commonwealth, the public trust assets, the landscapes, the waterways that connect us to the 10,000 generations of human beings that lived before there were laptops, and that ultimately connect us to God. And God talks to human beings through many vectors, through each other, through organized religion, through the great books of those religions, through wise people, through art and music and literature and poetry, but nowhere with such detail and grace and color and joy as through creation. And when we destroy a species, when we destroy a special place, we're diminishing our capacity to sense the divine, understand who God is, and what our own potential is as human beings. And Father Martin once told me that the definition of sin is an injury to another human being or to God, to our relationship with God. And my children are going to grow up in a world where they will never see the kind of explosions of color from butterflies that I saw every time I walked into my garden, because 80 or 90% of the butterflies are gone, the flying insects. They'll never hear the songbirds that I heard because 80% of them are gone. They'll never see the puddles that I saw as a boy, bubbling like cauldrons with tadpoles from salamanders and frogs. They're not going to see that in their lifetime. They're unaware of it. And it's like God is a tapestry and he's talking to us from all of these different vectors. And we're pulling threads out of that capacity. And it is such a crime against our children. And I think we deserve a president in this country who cares about these things and who talks about these things to the American people.
But just think of what we've already achieved with the help of many people, just like the people in this room. We did more to uphold religious liberty than any administration in history. I think everybody really admits that, even my opponents. Today, two of them came out and they said, well, that happens to be right. Actually, one of my opponents said that I was the greatest president in the last 100 years. And I said, oh, is he running against me? That's very nice. No, it's very nice. Look, they respect what we've done. I fearlessly protected the religious freedoms of doctors, nurses, teachers, and faith groups like the Little Sisters of the Poor. I blocked the IRS from using the Johnson Amendment to interfere with pastors' freedom of speech and other faith leaders. I stopped Barack Hussein Obama's hateful, bigoted assault on faith-based adoption and foster care services, as you know. And I restored your right to help those beautiful children find a loving, and equally beautiful family. As president, I stood proudly with our friend and ally, the State of Israel. I kept my promise. I kept my promise, recognized Israel's eternal capital, and opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. Even got it built. I got the embassy built. Can you believe that? Would have taken 20 years, you wouldn't have had an embassy. That was an interesting one. I said, do we have any land? You know, they wanted to spend $2 billion to build it. We spent slightly less than that, like $500,000. Got it built. I said, do you have any buildings around? You know, we were always first, like, you know, whether you always try and do, if you want a real building, you always try and get the post office because they were there early. I happened to do that in Washington, D.C., actually. We redid it and did very well. It's been a great success. It's been a really beautiful building. But I said, let's get it built. Let's get it built. So they came to me. They wanted to spend $2 billion. I said, well, maybe we have land that's a better location. They had a piece of land, but it was a bad location. The real estate people, two of them in the back that are friends of mine, they're very good real estate people, too. They know what I'm talking about. So they went out, they checked. They called me up 2 days later. They said, you know, we do have a great piece of land, and it has a building on it. I said, that's even better because you can renovate the building for a lot less than it costs to build a brand new one. A lot of people don't know that. So I put a crew on it. I said, how much can we do? Can we build it great? They said, sir, we can do it for $350,000. And it's the first time I think this ever happened to me, like in my entire life. I said, that sounds too low. How the hell can you do it for that? It sounds too low. And anyway, so we got it done. We did it for a little bit more. We used Jerusalem stone. Everyone talks about Jerusalem stone in New York. They love Jerusalem stone. It's very expensive. I said, can we use Jerusalem stone? Because we're in Jerusalem, right? They said, yeah. I said, it's very expensive. They said, no, we're in Jerusalem. You know, I have a friend, he thinks it's the most magnificent stone, and he's willing to pay anything for it. So we did the whole thing in Jerusalem stone. We got it done for less than $500,000. We opened the embassy, not only designated, but we opened it. And we saved almost $2 billion. Think of that. And the $2 billion wouldn't have been spent. That building wouldn't have been built for 20 years, but we got it opened very quickly, and it's really beautiful. And there's no reason, in my opinion, to ever redo it. But someday they'll knock it down and spend $2 billion or much more. But I also recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, something that was going on for 58 years. I got it done. We got it done quickly, and I withdrew the United States from the totally disastrous Iran nuclear deal. Unfortunately, this administration hasn't done a damn thing about it. They've let that just go on and on and on. And then they made a deal, as you know, for 5 hostages. I said, all right, that sounds okay. 5 hostages. They had 5, we had 5. That sounds okay. But they forgot to tell me one thing. In addition to the hostages, they get $6 billion. You know that deal? You heard about that deal? That's not a good deal. That's not. What are they doing? It's a 5 for 5. They said it's a 5 for 5 split. Plus they get $6 billion. Oh, that doesn't sound too good.
What is your relationship, and what is your understanding of God? Who is God?
Most philosophers would say, well, we're inside the mind of God. And so it would be impossible for us to understand actually what God's form is. So then the question is, how do you start believing in something that you can't see or smell or hear or touch or taste or acquire with your senses? And Jung provides the formula for that. And he says, act as if you fake it till you make it. And so that's, what I started doing. I just started pretending there was a God watching me all the time, and kind of life was a series of tests, and there was a bunch of moral decisions that I had to make every day. And if I make a whole bunch of those choices right, I maintain myself in a posture of surrender, which keeps me open to my higher power, to my God. And when I do those things right, so much about addiction is about abuse of power. All of us have some power, whether it's good looks, or whether it's connections, or education, or family, or whatever. And there's always a temptation to use those to fulfill self-will. And the challenge is, how do you use those always to serve instead God's will and the good of our community? And that, to me, is kind of the struggle. And when I do that, I feel God's power coming through me. and that I can do things. I'm much more effective as a human being. That gnawing anxiety that I lived with for so many years, and like, God, it's gone. And that I can kind of like put down the oars and hoist the sail, and the wind takes me, and I can see the evidence of it every day of my life. If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com.
Okay, so I think it's good. I do very well with the evangelicals. I love the evangelicals. And I have more people saying they pray for me. I can't even believe it. And they are so committed, and they're so believing. They say, sir, you're going to be okay. I pray for you every night. I mean, everybody, almost, I can't say everybody, but almost everybody that sees me, they say it. It's such a beautiful thing. You know what's a beautiful thing, too? When you look at all of this bad stuff going on, they have nothing to look up to. They have no God. They have no anything. They kill people. They beat people. They push people into subways. There's just nothing there. Religion is such a great thing. It keeps you, there's something to be good about. You want to be good. It's so important. And I don't know if it's explained right. I don't know if I'm explaining it right now. But when you have something like that, you want to be good. You want to go to heaven, okay? You want to go to heaven. If you don't have heaven, you almost say, what's the reason? Yeah. Why do I have to be good? Let's not be good. What difference does it make, right? Pastor Robert Jeffress, he's up there all the time. And he's always saying good things. A long time ago, when I just announced he was on Fox, of all places, and he said, no, he may not know the Bible as well as some. He may not know every passage. He may not know it actually so well at all. But he's the greatest leader, and he is a believer, and a strong believer, and he's going to take us to places that we would never have been taken before, and he turned out to be right.
If we want to meet our obligation as a generation, as a civilization, as a nation, which is to create communities for our children that provide them with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us, we've got to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, those things that are not reducible to private property, but by their nature are the property of all of us, the commons, the commonwealth, the landscapes, the waterways that connect us to the 10,000 generations of human beings that lived before there were laptops, and that ultimately connect us to God. And God talks to human beings through many vectors, through each other, through organized religion, through the great books of those religions, through wise people, through art and music and literature and poetry, but nowhere with such detail and grace and color and joy as through creation. And when we destroy a species, when we destroy a special place, we're diminishing our capacity to sense the divine, understand who God is, and what our own potential is as human beings. Father Martin once told me that the definition of sin is an injury to another human being or to God, to our relationship with God. And my children are going to grow up in a world where they will never see the kind of explosions of color from butterflies that I saw every time I walked into my garden. Because 80 or 90% of the butterflies are gone, the flying insects. They'll never hear the songbirds that I heard. They're not going to see that in their lifetime. They're unaware of it. And it's like God is a tapestry, and he's talking to us from all of these different vectors, and we're pulling threads out of that capacity, and it is such a crime against our children. And I think we deserve a president in this country who cares about these things and who talks about these things to the American people.
So I just wrote this out very quickly about the Pope. Do you want to hear it? Should I read it to you? Okay. He actually said that maybe I'm not a good Christian or something. It's unbelievable, which is really not a nice thing to say. So it's a response from Donald Trump. It says, if and when the Vatican is attacked by ISIS. You know, ISIS, their primary trophy, very few people know this. I read this about 2 months ago. Nobody even believed it. Their primary thing, you've seen what they've done all over the Middle East. Their primary goal is to get to the Vatican. That would be their ultimate trophy. They want to do what they did to all of these magnificent artifacts and all of the beautiful museums that they've totally destroyed all over the Middle East, right? And I didn't know this. I read this like 4 or 5 months ago. I made mention of it 2 months ago, and everyone said, what are you talking about? They thought, like, I'm kidding. It's true. And now there are stories about it. Not big stories, but there are stories about it. And I was checked by one of the reporters that said, they don't want to talk about Then he called up and apologized. The big thing, they want to get to the Vatican. So, if and when the Vatican is attacked by ISIS, which, as everyone knows, is ISIS's ultimate trophy, I can promise you that the Pope would have only wished and prayed that Donald Trump would have been president. Because it's true. It's true. Because this would not have happened. ISIS would have been eradicated, unlike what is happening now with our all talk, no action politicians. That's what's happening now. We had a General MacArthur. If we had a General George Patton, I mean, they'd be gone before they even got time to go over and check it out, okay? It's a ridiculous situation. The Mexican government and its leadership has made many disparaging remarks about me. See, the Pope was in Mexico. The leadership's meeting. Oh, Donald Trump is a bad guy. He wants to build a wall. He wants to keep illegal immigration. It's terrible. They don't say it that way. They say, he wants people to stop having this and that. Look, I'm wise to them. I respect Mexico. I respect their leadership. Their leadership is much smarter, much sharper than our leadership. And that's the problem. That's the problem. You know, we have a trade deficit with Mexico. Listen to this one. $58 billion. So when I say we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, these politicians all come up and they say, you can't get Mexico to pay. I say, yes, I can. They have no idea what I'm even talking about. You people do because you have some business people here, some good business people. Some of them I know. But Mexico's going to pay because the wall is $12 billion, $10 to $12 billion. That's a super job, okay? That's if you do a Trump wall, okay? Real nice job. Nice high wall. This is not a wall that they're going to drive their trucks over. Now, when we have a deficit of $58 billion, 10 to 12 billion is peanuts, okay? It's peanuts. That's nothing. So the politicians say, how could you possibly say that? You know that. Now they're all starting to say, you know, he's really right. We're losing a lot of money with Mexico. And that's not including the drug money that's pouring across, which is much more, okay? Believe me, we get the drugs, they get the cash. So they met with the Pope, and they obviously got to the Pope, and they're telling him what a bad guy Donald Trump is. He doesn't know me, and, you know, et cetera. So the Mexican government and its leadership has made many disparaging remarks about me to the Pope because they want to continue to rip off the United States, both on trade and at the border. That's what they're doing. They're ripping us off. And they understand that I am totally wise to them, and if I'm president, we'll stop it immediately, okay? Immediately. The Pope only heard one side of the story, and he didn't see the crime, the drug trafficking, and the negative economic impact the current policy, I mean, you see what's going on, right? The current policies have on the United States. So he didn't see the crime, the drug trafficking, the economic impact is horrendous, all right? People can come into our country, folks, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in through a process. We're like an open gate. People just walk across. They walk into our country. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they've come from. And by the way, speaking of that, the migration, the people from Syria, we don't know. Are they ISIS? Are they not? They're not coming into this country, okay? They can't. He doesn't see how Mexican leadership, and he doesn't understand it, he doesn't see how Mexican leadership is outsmarting our president And Obama and our leadership has no clue as to the negotiation or anything else. In other words, we are being so badly out-negotiated by Mexico. Mexico knows that if I win, those days are gone. We're not going to have a $58 billion trade deficit. Not going to happen. We're not going to lose Carrier, air conditioners, just moved to Mexico. You saw that. We're not going to have Nabisco move their big plants to Mexico. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. We're not going to have Ford building so big, $2.5 billion plant. And now, I've been talking about that for a year and a half. Now they're doubling down. I read the other day in the paper, they're doubling down. Ford is going in much bigger into Mexico. They took a plant from Tennessee that was going to go to Tennessee, and the plant went to Mexico instead. When are we going to get smart, folks? When are we going to get smart? Got to happen. We can't let this stuff go on because we're losing our jobs. We're losing everything. The Pope isn't being told that. The Pope is being told that Donald Trump is not a nice person, okay? Donald Trump is a very nice person, and I am a very nice person. And I'm a very good Christian because the Pope said something to the effect that maybe Donald Trump isn't Christian, okay? And he's questioning my faith. I was very surprised to see it, but I am a Christian. I'm proud of it. Okay, for a religious leader to question a person's faith is disgraceful. I'm proud to be a Christian, and as president, I will not allow Christianity to be consistently attacked and weakened, unlike what is happening now with our current president. Okay? Believe me. No leader, very important, and this has just been given out to the press 2 seconds ago. No leader, especially a religious leader, should have the right to question another man's religion or faith, especially when they feed all sorts of false information into him. They're using the Pope as a pawn, and they should be ashamed of themselves. That's the Mexican government. They should be ashamed of themselves for doing so, especially when so many lives are involved and when illegal immigration is so rampant and so dangerous and so bad for the United States. Okay? Period. That's it.
Hey, everybody. This message is for those of you who hold Easter as an important holiday. For many people today, Easter is about Easter bunnies and jelly beans. But for me, growing up in the household in which I did, it's not just a holiday, it's a holy day. For me, the meaning of Easter is about hope from beyond all hope. The story of Christ's resurrection has sustained me throughout my lifetime. And during those many times when I'd reached the end of my inner resources and had to put my faith entirely in God, today it often seems like our country is in that situation, at the end of our resources, beyond hope. But what the Christ story teaches us is that with faith, there's always hope. And I see for America, well, I wouldn't go so far as to say a resurrection, but I see the possibility of a renaissance, of a rebirth, and how that will come about through faith. Faith in the higher ideals inspired by our nation's founding, faith in the values of free expression, of equality under the law, of honesty and transparency, and ethics in government, and the end of corruption. And above all, faith in one another. And that's the foundation that we need to build on if we're going to restore America as an exemplary nation to the rest of the world. And that will be my commitment as President of the United States. I hope that all of you can now enjoy the many blessings of Easter Sunday. Thank you, and God bless you.
Under crooked Joe Biden, Christians and Americans of faith are being persecuted, and government has been weaponized against religion like never before, and also presidents like never before. Here I am. I always say Al Capone was treated better than I was treated. Scarface, Al Capone, he was a tough one. Biden and his corrupt Department of Injustice have sent SWAT teams to arrest pro-life activists. They've targeted conservative parents at school board meetings who don't want filth taught to their children. It's filth. What they're teaching in schools is filth and nonsense, and we can't let that happen. But they're being targeted, and now the communists, Marxists, and fascists are going hard after Catholics, even plotting to send spies into Catholic churches. It's all come out, just like in the Soviet Union from days gone by. Now think of it, if you're Catholic, why would you vote for a Democrat? What they're doing to Catholics, I don't know what's going on with the Catholics, but they're really being persecuted. Why would you vote for Biden, and why would you vote for a Democrat? A new report from the House Judiciary Committee proves that the Biden FBI actually targeted Catholics as potential domestic terrorists. Do you believe this? And, you know, evangelicals will not be far behind, because when that starts, it starts happening on a very major scale. When I'm back in the White House, never again will your government be used to target Christians and other religious believers. Upon taking office, I will create a new federal task force on fighting anti-Christian bias, to be led by a fully reformed Department of Justice that's fair and equitable. Its mission will be to investigate all forms of illegal discrimination, harassment, and persecution against Christians in America. They are going after Christians in America. Who's can believe all this stuff? It's not believable, is it? But it is fact. It's just like so many of the other things when I stand up and I say that we will stop, and I've said it, we will stop men from participating in women's sports. I mean, the whole thing that you have, no, but things that you say that you can't believe you're up here and saying it. We are for parental rights. You have to say that. No, think of it. We are for parental rights. Who believes that? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, who would ever have to say a thing like that? We're for parental rights. Of course we're for parental rights. But the Democrats aren't. They're fascists. They're not. They want school boards. They want people to take your children and do things with your children that are not even speakable. Americans of faith are not a threat to our country. Americans of faith are the soul of our country, and they have been from the beginning. I will defend religion, and I will defend In God We Trust. We will defend In God We Trust, which is... So with that, I'm going to ask Ben Carson, and you can stay if you want it, because you need the prayer more than I do, I think. You may be the only ones. Maybe a good, solid prayer, and they'll be honest, Ben. Is that possible? So, Ben, we'll ask you to say grace. Thank you.
Our kind Father in heaven, we're so thankful for the opportunities and the freedom that you've granted us in this country. We thank you for a president and for cabinet members who are courageous, who are willing to face the winds of controversy in order to provide a better future for those who come behind us. We're thankful for the unity in Congress that has presented an opportunity for our economy to expand so that we can fight the corrosive debt that has been destroying our future. And we hope that that unity will spread even beyond party lines so that people recognize that we have a nation that is worth saving, and recognize that nations divided against themselves cannot stand. In this time of discord, distrust, and dishonesty, we ask that you would give us a spirit of gratitude, compassion, and common sense, and give us the wisdom to be able to guide this great nation. In the future, we ask in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Ben. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Mike, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. President. As I told you last night, shortly after the Senate vote, I know I speak on behalf of the entire cabinet and of millions of Americans when I say congratulations and thank you. Thank you for seeing through the course of this year an agenda that truly is restoring this country. You promised economic renewal at home. You said we could make this economy great again. And you promised to roll back regulations. And you signed more bills rolling back federal red tape than any president in American history. You've unleashed American energy. You've spurred an optimism in this country that's setting records. But you promised the American people in that campaign a year ago that you would deliver historic tax cuts. And it would be a middle-class miracle. And in just a short period of time, that promise will be fulfilled. And I'm deeply humbled as your Vice President to be able to be here because of your leadership, Mr. President, and because of the strong support of the leadership in the Congress of the United States. You're delivering on that middle-class miracle. But mostly, Mr. President, I'll end where I began and just tell you, I want to thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank you for speaking on behalf of and fighting every day for the forgotten men and women of America. Because of your determination, because of your leadership, the forgotten men and women of America are forgotten no more, and we are making America great again. Thank you, Mr. President. God bless you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's a great honor for me to join my friend Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar and all of you today. Thank you for coming from over 160 countries to our historic National Mall in Washington, D.C. to celebrate world culture and our capacity for evolutionary, personal, and group transformation. I want to share with you some of my own personal story about transformation. I was a drug addict when I was a teenager, and I was addicted to heroin for over 14 years. And during that period, I was being run by an engine of self-will. I describe myself during that period as just a bundle of appetites that were constantly asking me to feed them. And all of those things were the service to self-will. And when I got sober, I had to make a choice about whether this was an addiction that was going to kill me. It was very clear. And that I had to make a dramatic choice to change my life from a life that was being governed by self-will to a life that was being governed by a power greater than myself. And you can call it God or by whatever name that you want. And I made that decision to turn my life over that. I had to, in order to do that, I had to break my life. I had to start very methodically in breaking my life, my everyday, down to a series of moral choices. God gives us time, but he breaks time into manageable units called days. And every day we get to start again in trying to put God's will in charge of self-will. And I had to break every day into a series of little choices, probably 40 choices a day. And each one now for me had a moral dimension. So do I get up on time when the alarm goes off, or do I stay in bed with my indolent thoughts? Do I make the bed? It's probably the most important choice that I make of the day. Do I hang up the towels after I shower? Do I put the water in the ice tray rather than putting the ice tray back in the refrigerator empty? When I go into the closet and pull out a pair of blue jeans and all those little wire hangers drop to the floor, do I pick them up and put them back where they're supposed to be? Or do I say, I'm too important for that, that's somebody else's job? Do I put the shopping cart back where the shopping cart is supposed to go in the parking lot at the grocery store? Or do I leave that for somebody else? And what I find is that when I make a lot of those choices correctly, that I can maintain this posture of surrender and that I feel God's presence in my life. You cannot live off the laurels of a spiritual awakening. You have to renew it every day. And my self-will is constantly looking for an opening to get back control of my life. And my inclination is that when my life starts going well again, which it did right as soon as I got sober, and all of the cash and prizes start flowing into my life, my inclination is to say, thanks God, I got it from here, and then take the wheel of the car and drive it off the cliff again. But the trick is, how do we stay in that posture of surrender, even when good things are happening, even when we're not desperate, we're not forced onto our knees to beg God for help in our lives? Addiction is about abuse of power. We ultimately have to turn our power over to our higher power. When I was active, I was like a big truck. I was very ambitious, even though I was an addict. I was like a big truck stuck in a ditch with the real wheels spinning, with smoke coming out of the headers and the pipes and making a lot of noise and flames, but I was going nowhere. It was all activity and no progress. And part of turning your life over is learning to be quiet with yourself. And there's a line from Isaiah that was very influential for me when I first got sober. Be still and know that I am God. And that means you don't have to fix everything. You don't have to reach outside of yourself to fix something that is wrong inside of yourself. And when I'm in that place of peace and calm, I become much more efficient as a human being. And I become a much more effective human being. And what I know now is that everything I've ever done in my life that comes from self-will has turned into meaningless, into wormwood and bile. And that everything that I've done that is enduring, that is important, that is meaningful in my life has come from a spiritual place. And the trick is, how do you stay in that spiritual place even when your life is going well? And that's the discipline that we need to exercise over ourselves. And God exercises it over us. When we make God exercise it over us, it's called humiliation. When we exercise it over ourselves, it's called humility. And all of us have to now approach life with humility. And that means extending compassion and kindness to people around us, and particularly those people who don't agree with us. Everybody who talks to us, every encounter that we have, is God talking to us, teaching us a lesson. Even somebody who throws you a finger or an obscene gesture when you're driving because you took a wrong turn or something, that I have to say to myself when that happens to me, what is God trying to teach me from this? What am I supposed to learn from this circumstance? We have to address all of each other that way. We have to all understand that we're God's children and that each one of us is a vector through which God is communicating to all others. And that all the relationships you have in your life, the people who love you, but even the people who don't like you and the people you don't like, that they're all messengers from God. And when we understand this, we see that the giant divisions that are now polarizing in our country and humanity, that they're ultimately the product of that self-will. And our job as individuals is to overcome self-will, to turn our lives over to that higher power, to do the next right thing, and to show kindness and compassion and respect to people with whom we disagree, and to try to love them, which is effort. Love ultimately is effort, and to make that effort towards other human beings. And in that way, we can begin to bridge the divide that separates humanity. And when we do that, the amount that we can accomplish will be almost indescribable. Abraham Lincoln, whose statue we can see on the National Mall, he was a wood splitter. He worked in the woods and he made rails, and he was known as the rail cutter. He was a very big man. He was 6'5" or 6'6", and he was tremendously strong. He could beat anybody in his state in wrestling and in feats of physical strength. But he was very famous for being able to cut down trees fast. He was asked one time that if he had to cut down a very, very big oak tree, what his strategy would be. And he had 5 hours to do it. He said, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. That is a metaphor for life. When we work on perfecting our spiritual condition, we become much more effective human beings and much more effective leaders in our community. So I urge all of you to try to do something every day for somebody that you don't like, and then don't tell anybody about it. God bless you and thank you. If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com.
Most importantly, I brought my Bible. Okay? And You know, it's First Presbyterian Church, Jamaica, and this was written by my mother with my name, it's a long time ago, with my name, with my address, with everything. In case I lost it, somebody would return it. You know, in the old days, if you lost something, they returned it. Today, a little bit less so. But I saw this, and I said, I have to bring it and just show it because it brings back so many memories. We're going to have a very interesting period of time, and maybe it starts today because Speaker Boehner, you know, some people like him on a personal basis. Do people like him on a personal basis? Anybody? You know, we want to see the job being done properly. We want people that are going to get it done. And I don't understand. They get elected. They're full of vim and vigor. They're going to change things. They're going to get rid of Obamacare. They're going to do all of these things. They come down to these magnificent vaulted ceilings that you see all over Washington. And what happens? They become different people. Like you have this clown, Marco Rubio. I've been so nice to him. I've been so nice. I've been so nice. And then, no, but he's in favor of immigration, and he has been. He has been. It was the Gang of Eight, and you remember the Gang of Eight. It was terrible. And then he went down in the polls, and you have to stay. You know what? If you believe in something, you have to be true to yourself. You have to be. You have to be. But it was the Gang of Eight, and it was really, really, you talk about weak on immigration. Nobody weaker. And all of a sudden, he goes down in the polls, and all of a sudden, he starts changing his tone. But you never really change your tone. Right? John was in and out of jail for years until at age 38, he was arrested for bank robbery. You don't look like a bank robber, John. It's come a long way. John soon ended up in federal prison, relegated to solitary confinement. That's where God found him. John began to read the Bible and listen to Christian radio, right? Incredible. One morning at 2 a.m., he woke up to the voice of the great Billy Graham. Reverend Graham's words came through the airwaves. Jesus wants to be Lord of your life. That night, John dedicated his life to Christ. He spent the rest of his time in prison praying, studying the Bible, and bringing the Lord to his fellow inmates. The day after John's release, a visitor knocked on his door. It was the man who put him in jail, FBI Special Agent Richard Beasley. Who's here? Richard? Come on up, Richard. I want you to know that I've been praying for you very strongly. He said that. God called me to the FBI in part because of you, John. The two are now lifelong friends. John, do you like him?
I love him.
Oh, you love him? That's nice. That's beautiful. John runs a ministry that has helped more than 2,000 former inmates rejoin society, and he's the talk of the country. The job John does is incredible. John and Richard, you are a living testament to the power of prayer. Your story reminds us that prayer changes hearts and transforms lives. It uplifts the soul, inspires action, and unites us all as one nation under God. So important. And we say it here, you know? A lot of people, they don't say it. But you know what? They're starting to say it more, just like we're starting to say Merry Christmas when that day comes around. You notice the big difference between now and 2 or 3 years ago? It was, Paula, it was going in the other direction rapidly, right? Now it's straight up. Our country was founded on prayer. Our communities are sustained by prayer. And our nation will be renewed by hard work, a lot of intelligence, and prayer. Today we gather to remember this truth. We thank God for the faith of our people. We praise God for the blessings of freedom. And we ask God to forever bless this magnificent land that we all love so much, America. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless the United States. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you. This is a big signing.
We're joining you.
Come on up, folks. Come on up.
Jack Graham.
Thank you. Yes.
See you again.
See you, Jack. Come on, Mike.
She's with
Wow, what a group, huh? It's a big. Don't worry, the collapse is only going down one side. That's great. This is a good one. Couldn't we get some more people? Hi, everybody. Come on up. This is history. This is history. Come on up.
Right here, yes, sir.
Maybe he wants to bring some more people up on the stage.
That's fantastic. Yeah.